all of our hockey insiders all year long, brought to you by the great crew and the great guys over at proamsports.ca. They've got that Ryan Smith private signing coming up. The deadline to get your items in or selected from what they're offering is tomorrow. Mike Krushelnyski has a deadline of April 20th, and Ronnie Lowe on May 4th will be the deadline for the private signing with local good guy Ronnie Lowe. All the details on that, proamsports.ca. Also, if you're looking for a car flag with the playoffs just around the corner, Pro-Am can hook you up with those as well. All right, let's bring in Darren Dreger today. The Edmonton Oilers have dropped 2 in a row. Colorado played last night, won last night. Dregs, this is a bad. We're trying to figure out. We know it's just like another regular season game, but they lost to Colorado last time they played them. They'll play them again, but it'll be the final game of the year. Outside of maybe some Art Ross things, I'm not sure how much will be on the line for either team in the final game of the year. How important do you think this game is for the psyche of the Edmonton Oilers tonight?
Yeah, I think it is important, right? Because if you're going to hoist that Stanley Cup, which is clearly the goal of both these clubs, you've got to get through some of the best teams. And so the mindset this time of year matters. I would think that most teams, even a team like Edmonton who's in a playoff lock, are thinking that way. You're trying to get into that mindset of being in playoff mode with the remainder of the regular season games and, round one looming. So, Colorado, we know, is not that removed from being a Stanley Cup champion. And they seem to have a lot of swagger in that Western Conference. But so does Edmonton. The Dallas Stars, the Winnipeg Jets are kind of teetering a little bit, but they're playing also better of late. So again, at least for me, from a mental prep perspective, games like this matter. It's different than a non-playoff team using a game against Edmonton or Colorado as a measuring stick, as a test to see where they're at this point of the year. At this point, it's a little bit of, okay, unless you're going through load management, you've got top players who understandably are on the sidelines, and you don't have the lineup that you're going to dress in game one of the postseason, then again, there's still a mental attachment to this thing that makes it worth something to everybody.
NHL analyst and insider Darren Dreger with us on the show this morning. Lots of talk, obviously, heading into this game about the race for the Art Ross Trophy, how it will translate into the conversation for the Hart Trophy as well, and with McDavid and McKinnon in the spotlight tonight. Meanwhile, Kucherov has a 7-point cushion on McDavid. Like, he's not slowing down at all over in Tampa, is he?
No, he's not. And frankly, the Tampa Bay Lightning are now quickly developing into the talk of the East, and deservedly so. All Nikita Kucherov does is string together 3-point games. I mean, that's all he does. And, he's not a player that flies under the radar. That's ridiculous. I mean, we know he's in the Art Ross. We know he's in the Hart conversation, and it's seemingly been that way year after year after year for Nikita Kucherov. But they've got a lot of things going right now with Tampa Bay. Steven Stamkos with a 2-goal, 3-point night last night against Montreal. Nicky Paul is starting to put the puck in the net on a consistent basis. Their goaltending is elite. If I were a team in the Eastern Conference, I'd be worried about the Tampa Bay Lightning. Again, not a lot different than the conversation we just had about why the game between Colorado and Edmonton matters to both those teams. It's about momentum and going into the playoffs with the right frame of mind. And right now, Tampa Bay has a high level of confidence. So they're going to be a real difficult out in round one in the East.
When you look at things in the West out here, and it's funny because, you brought up Dallas, you mentioned Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Dallas, watching them play a couple nights ago and what they did to the Oilers, they're constructed differently than Colorado and Edmonton. Like a lot of high-end talent in Colorado, and we're talking elites. Because Dallas rolls out the top line with Pavelski and then Rupe Hinton-Robertson, and then basically 2 second lines after that. Their fourth line would probably play with most third lines around the league. I'm really fascinated to see, especially over in that other conference, because it would likely be Winnipeg, Colorado, in the other division, and then Dallas waiting. I'm very interested to see how the teams of depth go up against the elite teams of top-end talent in the playoffs and how that sorts out. It's really fascinating, isn't it?
It is, and I don't want to say that the Dallas Stars have flown under the radar, maybe a little bit in the East, and I don't think that's out of disrespect. I think it's just because Dallas has been good, basically from puck drop in game one. They've been very, very consistent this year. Yeah, they've had some rocky times with their goaltending, but of late, their goaltending is terrific in Jake Ottinger. Real nice balance in Dallas. Dusty, you talked about, how solid their four-line construction is. They identified early in the regular season that they felt like if they had the opportunity to add a decent right-shot D-man, that's exactly what they do. Well, they get that in Chris Tanev, a guy with high-level character as well. So he helps in the leadership department. Not that they were lacking there, but it really kind of solidified that group. And then when you look at what they've got coming here, the pushing of the young legs, look at the emergence of Logan Stankoven. I mean, this kid has been terrific. And they've got another guy, Maverick Bourque, who's had an unbelievable season in the American Hockey League. So when the veil of the salary cap comes off and Jim Nill and Pete DeBoer can bring in reinforcements and all hands on deck, well, the Dallas Stars have more coming. So as long as something doesn't go awry, where special teams dry up, their offense isn't quite as consistent, their goaltending maybe takes a little bit of a step back, I don't know how you can overlook the Dallas Stars as being a top team in the West, and perhaps in that conversation of being in the top 2 or 3 of the top Stanley Cup contenders at this point.
TSN's Darren Dreger with us on the Nielson Show this morning. Darren, just going out east now, can the Penguins do it? Can they escape the purgatory of the middle and grab a wild card spot? Big win last night. Sidney Crosby dragging this team, kicking and screaming. I know Dusty and I were talking. I mean, a little talk and a little smoke of Crosby and a heart. Won't get it. But I mean, I think we said too, just having that conversation is a big win for them as well. So can he do it, Darren? Can Crosby get the Pens to a wild card position?
Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Now, they're going to need some help around them, obviously. And I don't mean this to sound like the captain, one of the most decorated in NHL history, one of the most beloved players in hockey history, and Sidney Crosby is giving the middle finger to Pittsburgh Penguins management. But it sort of has that feel to it, doesn't it? When the trade deadline came around, I don't blame Kyle Dubas for making the move that he made. Yeah, you can be critical and say, really, did you have to trade him to a conference rival in the Carolina Hurricanes? Jake Gensel we're talking about.
Yeah.
But obviously, that was the best deal that Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins had. But it was a direct shot at the rest of the group saying, we can't afford to let an asset like this go into the open market and get nothing back. Good business sense, good strategy. The problem with it is maybe they underestimated the willpower of Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson and Evgeny Malkin and everyone associated with that NHL lineup, because what they've done since is borderline magical. It really is. And it would be such a terrific storyline across the league, not just in the East, if Crosby and the Pens found a way to claw in. Now, if they make it, who's not making it? And when I look at the playoff setup right now, you've got Washington that's still very much in it. You've got the Islanders with a big win last night. They're very much in it. Yep. The Detroit Red Wings, they're in it. I look at the Philadelphia Flyers. And as much as I like the Philadelphia Flyers story this year for a lot of reasons, including, the spontaneous combustion of John Tortorella on a day in and day out basis, they feel the most vulnerable to me, right? So it's going to take some artwork for the Penguins to find a way to claw in, but it's obviously doable, and it feels like there's just something special that's developing.
And the Flyers are that one of these things is not like the other. I mean, you're looking at it and you're kind of going, why are they? And when your coach is spontaneously combusting every second night, I mean, that's hardly a recipe for success, but there they are.
They'd be. I just looking at Pittsburgh's schedule. They get Tampa and Toronto, not easy, but they have games against the Red Wings and the Islanders still, which are going to, they're going to be huge. They also have the Bruins and Preds, so it's not an easy schedule for Pittsburgh here, but the two against Red Wings and the Islanders certainly make it possible. Philadelphia Flyers, as we mentioned, a little bit all over the place. Dregs, I saw you tweeting about the Canadian Hockey League and Russian players last night. Tell us exactly what's going on there, and where does this lead in the overall Russian involvement in anything, I guess, moving forward.
Yeah, and I don't know that it leads anywhere, Dusty, to be honest here. This is just a recognition by the Canadian Hockey League, which really is the three major junior leagues, right? The Western League, the Ontario League, the QMJHL, who, banned the inclusion of Russian and Belarusian players from their annual import draft. And when you look around the differing layers of hockey in North America, that hasn't been the case. So you've got the BC Junior League, who effectively went rogue, right? They broke away from the umbrella of Hockey Canada and said, no, we're going to do it on our own. Well, they've been cherry picking these players because they don't need the import draft rules and all of that. You guys don't pay a whole lot of attention to the GTHL in Toronto, in Ontario, but it's an enormous minor hockey association, and they've got a high percentage of Russian players. Really? Right? So there's no restrictions there. Yeah. And that's always kind of been the case in the GTHL. So I think that this is just creating a more level playing field for CHL. The owners, the managers of Canadian Hockey League teams wanted access to these players, and now they'll have it effective July. I think it's July 3rd. Is that when the import draft is in the CHL? But I don't really think that it's going to have a lot of influence on the geopolitical framework of, what happens next and whether or not this is going to influence international play. The IHF probably isn't paying a whole lot of attention to what the CHL is doing with its import draft.
Dregs, enjoy your weekend, and we'll chat with you on Monday.
Okay, guys, have a good one. Thank you.
There you go. That's Darren Dreger, Ray and Dregs podcast. You can find it on all your podcasting platforms as well.